So we have about 200 people in here now. There's still people joining. But just in the interest of time, I might actually just kick off with just housekeeping. So first of all, you can see Louise, you can see my screen, can't you? Yeah.
I can indeed, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, just to make sure. First of all, my name is Aislinn, so I am the content marketing manager at UCD Professional Academy, and we are doing a collaboration today with Smurfit on this webinar. Before we get started, so the webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording with you in the coming days via email. If you have any questions at all, please do write them in the Q&A box below. You'll notice that the chat box is actually disabled just for the webinar purposes, but the Q&A box is open and you can use that as well. And we'll have the session at the end and answer any questions. So before I hand over to Louise, just a little bit of background information on her. So Louise has over 25 years experience in recruitment, people development and organizational strategy. She was the managing director of Robert Walters Ireland for 18 years, where she led the firm through significant market challenges, driving high-performing teams. She now leads the Careers Network at UCD Smurfit, where she dedicates her time to equipping students with the skills and insights they need to succeed in these evolving markets. So I hope that summed it up nicely, Louise. You have extensive experience, but I'll pass it over to you there now to kick off the session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aislinn. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me here today. My name is Louise Campbell, and I, as Aislinn said, I lead the Careers Network at Smurfit Business School. I'm a relatively new addition to Smurfit, having spent the past 25 years in recruitment, first as the managing director for a global PLC, and then from 2020 onwards as their global head of learning and development. So throughout my career, I've worked with hundreds of clients who've given me the remit to source high quality professionals for their organization. And that's across financial services, FMCG, pharmaceuticals, tech, etc., spanning a variety of disciplines in the professional world. I've focused on hiring managerial and exec level positions for the majority of my career. And then I moved into a role where I was responsible for training our own people internally to do the same. I've also managed people in the workplace, I think, from quite an early age, made lots of mistakes along the way. So I'm delighted to share with you some of the insights today, which I have witnessed and learned from over the last number of years. So just before I start, we're actually going to run our first poll. So Aislinn, if you can bring up the first poll, I just wanted to get an idea of roughly how many people on the call have got staff management responsibilities.
You can see that there on screen now, can you?
Oh yeah,
we have people there, yeah.
So we'll just take a minute. And Aislinn, you let us know.
Yeah, perfect. We have, it's about, I would say maybe 80% of people on the call do have staff management responsibilities.
Okay, fantastic.
So yeah, big number.
We've got a big number of people on the call. That's really good to know. Okay, so just moving on, I think, I just wanted to talk a little bit, just before I speak about the agenda, actually, I just want to tell you about the management positions that I have recruited for hundreds of clients really across Sydney, London, and then Dublin since 2003. In the last final 4 years of my career prior to joining Smurfit, I stepped into the role of a global head of learning and development. And although my first priority was to redesign our onboarding experience globally, which was for all new hires across the world, a year into this endeavor, I did highlight that I thought that the biggest impact that L&D could have was on training our 500 strong manager cohort, because I believe this was the real low-hanging fruit. High-performing specialists promoted overnight into leadership roles who were suddenly expected to inspire, to motivate, to drive performance, and to retain top talent. And I think beyond managing teams, these new leaders had to align with the company's global vision. They had to communicate effectively. They had to analyze data to set KPIs and strategy. And then they had to collaborate cross-functionally with other teams such as legal, tech, marketing, HR. On top of that, they needed to champion ED&I initiatives, foster psychological safety, prioritize mental health and well-being, all the while they were leading hybrid teams across multiple locations. So out of the 80% of people who answered that first poll. I'm wondering if anyone on this call can feel their pain right now. Management is a tough job, and I think managers are often promoted because they're subject matter experts and they excel in their field. However, both the individual and the organization can sometimes really underestimate the new levels of responsibility and expertise required to transition into a successful people leadership role. Leadership isn't just about technical proficiency, it demands a whole new skill set, and that's coaching, motivating, strategic thinking, and balancing multiple stakeholder relationships. And certainly without the right developmental support, I think even the most talented professionals can really struggle to navigate this shift effectively. So what we're going to cover today is several key topics. I think we're going to look at firstly the evolution of management structures and start by looking at traditional management models and how they've evolved over time. We're also going to look at the declining appeal of middle management, and I'll share some of my thoughts on why middle management roles have become less attractive, particularly to the younger generations, so Generation Z, X, Y, and even the emerging Alpha generation. We're going to look at then the key competencies of a modern manager. So drawing from my experience really working with candidates and also hiring organizations across the Irish market and further beyond, I'll highlight the skills most in demand for today's leaders. Then we're going to touch on the reality of having it all. So exploring some of the challenges faced by managers who seem to be doing it all, but are struggling behind the scenes. And then a few leadership interview insights. So I'm going to discuss the main competencies that are assessed in today's leadership interviews and how we can answer those questions in order to portray yourself in the most positive light. We're going to wrap up then with a Q&A session. So any comments, questions throughout, we'll aim to cover them all before we finish within the hour. Okay, so next slide, please, Aisling. Changing times. And this really, I think, is worth a mention. I wanted to say that for decades, climbing the corporate ladder meant moving into management as quickly as possible. So shedding that individual contributor role in favor of greater responsibilities, obviously higher pay and authority over a team. And this traditionally has been seen as the only career path to success. However, times have changed. And if you look at a 2024 survey by CoderPad, it found that 36% of tech workers have absolutely no interest in managerial roles. Gen Z and millennials in particular prioritize work-life balance over traditional career advancement. And for many, the additional stress, the longer hours, the limited pay increases that come with managing people simply aren't worth the trade-off. And I think given the extra time, aggravation and stress commensurate with overseeing workers. Interestingly, Gen Z, and for anyone who just needs a refresher on that, they're people aged currently 12 to 27. They might be approaching their time in their careers when they're entering management positions. It turns out the majority of this younger generation are opting out of these roles. There was a report from recruitment agency Robert Walters in December 2024 that said 52% of Gen Zers that they had surveyed said they do not want to become middle managers. And 72% would choose an individual route to progression over managing others. So this really signals, I think, a major shift in workplace dynamics as younger professionals are prioritizing things like autonomy, work-life balance, and personal growth over the traditional route of leadership and team management. Moving on to the next slide, I think we can safely say the role of management is undergoing significant transformation in today's rapidly evolving business landscape. Expectations for managers are no longer confined to traditional tasks like planning, like organizing or controlling. They're now expected to be multi-skilled across various areas, blending that technical expertise with emotional intelligence, adaptability, and strategic vision. You can see from the quotes, I think, that I've put up on the screen from Kevin Thompson, who's the CEO of Capital Group. Gen Z are now really redefining what it means to be a leader. And unlike their predecessors who dutifully climbed the corporate ladder, I think this generation is seeking roles that offer much more direct impact and personal growth, that are free from the burdens of administrative drudgery. This trend is called conscious unbossing. And it does present a real thorny challenge for organizations, because middle management positions that were once seen as the vital stepping stone to senior leadership now symbolize everything that a younger generation rejects: high stress, minimal recognition, and the sacrifice of personal life for any type of corporate advancement. So moving on to the next slide, Aisling, I'm going to ask if we can run the next poll, please. For everybody on the call, I would love to know what you find most stressful about being a manager. And we've put up a couple of options. There might be more, but I think you've only got a 5. Number 1.
I'm going to put up. Can you see the polls there at the moment, Louise? No?
I can't see it yet.
2 seconds. It might just take a minute to pull them up here. Oh, sorry, 2 seconds. I need to close this one off.
Oh, that's all right.
I'm working off 2 screens at the moment. So I was looking at the wrong screen. Apologies for that. Can you see this one here? Yeah.
Yes, we can see it now. That's wonderful. Thanks, Aisling. So yes, so what do you find most stressful about being a manager? For all the people on the call: managing hybrid working arrangements, managing employee retention, managing employee mental health and well-being, managing the dual role of managing and your actual day job, or just time management in general. So we'll give you a minute to answer that, and Aisling, when it's complete, we'll get you to call out the results.
At the moment, it looks like about 70% of people on the call selected managing dual role of management and the actual day job.
Yeah.
That's about 70%. 10% people time management. About 20% of people managing employee mental health and well-being, and 10% managing employee retention, and just 1% managing hybrid. So the majority of the responses are managing dual roles of management and their actual day job.
Isn't that interesting? And I almost don't find that surprising. And it's great that hybrid working doesn't seem to be a big stressor for people anymore. It seems to be something that is slotted in quite nicely, which is wonderful. But I do think that there's a huge challenge around, you know, you get promoted because you're good at your job and you have a job to do, and then suddenly you've got people management responsibilities and it takes up so much time. So we're going to talk about that. So thanks everyone for answering that question. We're going to talk about some of the reasons now, I think, why management has become less appealing. I don't think we can talk about this without mentioning the pandemic. And I think when the pandemic hit, the role of a manager changed drastically. They were suddenly responsible for shifting employees to remote work. They had to create policies, procedures for large-scale remote operations. Then it was time to bring people back into the office, and they faced the challenge of coordinating hybrid schedules, tracking vaccination statuses, handling a host of other tasks, all while responding to directives from senior executives. And I think this added a whole new layer of complexity to their roles and made the job in the past couple of years feel more like firefighting than leadership. Then you've got the war for talent. Managers have had to navigate some major turbulence in the job market over the last couple of years. So post-pandemic, the race to hire talent was fierce. And then the Great Resignation came along, making recruitment and retention a major challenge. Companies found themselves struggling to fill positions and then also to keep their workforce stable. And just as things started to settle, I think there was a wave of white-collar layoffs, which affected predominantly the tech and the finance sectors within financial services. Managers were really caught in the middle of this because they were balancing the pressure of hiring on one side while dealing with the fallout from layoffs and a shifting workforce as well. Then you've got the pain, I think, of middle managers. And I think that this is really quite topical right now. When times get tough, middle management is often the first to feel the squeeze. And Mark Zuckerberg in 2023 rather chillingly called that year the year of efficiency. He pointed out inefficiencies within his own company, and he echoed a sentiment seen across other large tech firms, stating, and I'm going to get this quote right, "I don't think you want to be a management structure that's just managers, managing managers, managing managers, managing the people who are doing the work." So this, I think, reflects a growing trend of downsizing middle management roles as companies really look to streamline and to cut costs during uncertain times. Then you've got burnout. Middle management really often bear the brunt of workplace stress. they take a disproportionate share of the blame, as noted by executive search firm Korn Ferry. And this, I think, has understandably made the role much less appealing. 2022 survey by a think tank, Future Forum, revealed that in the post-COVID workplace, middle managers are the most exhausted employees across any level. And I think, in fact, 45% of middle managers self-reported feeling burned out. This really highlights the immense pressure they face while juggling multiple responsibilities without the support or recognition. And that burnout trend is pushing many, I think, to reconsider the toll that management is taking on their well-being. It's lonely at the top. So being a middle manager comes with a sense of isolation. You're caught between senior leadership on one side and then the rest of the team. You're no longer fully part of either group. You're tasked with implementing decisions from above, and then you're trying to motivate those below. So the result can often be a feeling of loneliness. When you walk into a room, the vibe shifts, conversations stop, the energy becomes more serious. And I think it can be tough to maintain close relationships when you're seen as that intermediary, constantly balancing competing pressures. And it can make the role feel particularly lonely. So what does all of this mean? I think it means sometimes you stop doing the job you love and you're good at. And when you step into a management role, you shift from doing the hands-on work that you're passionate about to focusing on a whole new set of challenges. You're facing issues like decreased performance levels, understaffing, poor communication, lack of teamwork. You're under constant pressure to meet objectives and to build team structures, and then to deal with difficult personalities on top of that. There's also the challenge of transitioning from being that individual contributor to reinventing yourself as someone who manages people and processes. So it's a tough shift, and many managers find themselves missing the work they truly love because they're pulled in different directions. And just to give you an example, say you're a talented coder, you might rise to a management position only then to find yourself responsible for building and for leading a team of 10. The once rock star software developer now spends their days managing daily workflows, handling admin tasks, and dealing with team dynamics. And that leaves little time for the hands-on coding that they enjoyed. And that shift can often lead to a lot of frustration as the tasks that once brought you joy are replaced by a to-do list that you wake up in the morning and you absolutely dread. And certainly from interviewing people over the last 25 years, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people who I meet who say that the job that they once loved has turned into a role where they feel like they're just babysitting others, and they're exhausted by continuously trying to motivate and inspire all the time. So now, Aisling, we're going to change to the next slide, if that's okay, and we're going to touch on some of the big changes that have come about in the actual role of management in the workplace and in the modern workplace in terms of work styles. Number one, over the past, I would say even 10 years, it's been a noticeable shift from that command and control to coaching and mentoring. So that traditional top-down approach, which is, do as I say, and do what I tell you, it's really being replaced, or has been replaced now, by a much more collaborative and supportive style. Managers are now expected to act as coaches or mentors, and they're expected to help employees grow and develop skills and unlock potential. This shift is definitely being driven by the growing emphasis on employee engagement, employee development, and retaining your people. Instead of just giving orders, managers are expected to create environments where employees feel empowered to take initiative and to contribute creatively. And I think this is really important because today's workforce, particularly your millennials and your Gen Z, they really value purpose and growth and meaningful work over mere compliance. And if you speak to any of them, and all the data is telling us that they want an environment that fosters learning and career progression, and a coaching and mentoring style, which helps build much more of a connection between leaders and employees, which therefore results in higher engagement, lower turnover, improved job satisfaction, etc. And I think it's important to remember that most people are promoted because they excel at their job. So the traditional top-down management approach sometimes feels very comfortable because you're simply telling people what needs to be done based on how you've done things in the past, and you expect them to perform at the same high standards. Number two, increased focus on EI or EQ. And I think soft skills, particularly emotional intelligence, has become really crucial for effective leadership. It goes back to the fact that managers are expected, to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics, address employee well-being, foster inclusive, psychologically safe environments. And certainly in recent years, clients of mine have increasingly prioritized emotional intelligence in their hiring practices, really recognizing its crucial role in effective leadership. And they value candidates highly who can demonstrate empathy, who can demonstrate self-awareness, and the ability to manage not only their own emotions, but the emotions within the team that they're working in, particularly in high pressure environments. And it's something that more than likely you will be questioned on in an interview for a leadership position. Number three, multidisciplinary knowledge. So, excuse me, managers are now expected to have a really broad range of skills across various domains. There's nothing, great about being a particular subject matter expert and specialist when you're moving into a management position, because you're supposed to be skilled across so many things, from digital literacy to financial acumen to project management to marketing, and even to HR. And I think this is largely due to the interconnected nature of modern business functions. And having that multidisciplinary knowledge is essential for people managers, because it allows them also to be really effective business partners across an organization. Number four, data-driven decision-making. No surprise to anyone on the call, I'm sure, the rise of big data and analytics means that managers must be comfortable interpreting data to make informed decisions. So this requires familiarity with data tools and the ability to analyze trends, performance metrics, customer insights, etc. And employers are increasingly seeking people who are comfortable making those data-driven decisions. And the ability, I think, clients would always, in my past role, ask me for the ability for anybody going into a leadership position to be able to absorb data and comprehend vast amounts of it and use this to inform their decision making. And it's a crucial part of most job specs in a people leadership role at this moment in time. So Aisling, next slide, if that's possible. We're just going to touch on a few more. Digital proficiency, I touched on it there, but managers across all industries are expected now to have a good grasp of digital tools, platforms, systems, even if they're not in tech-centric roles. So that includes everything from your project management software, your communication tools, your automation technologies, anything from, if you're working within a team, you could be using software like Trello or Monday, alongside analytical tools like Microsoft Power BI or Tableau, and to be able to take all of this data on board and use it to be able to create a high functioning team. And I think this is, more important than ever. This isn't going anywhere. It's only going to become more and more and bigger in everybody's job in the future. Let's touch on ED&I. Today's managers, they're expected to lead diverse teams and foster an inclusive culture where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to contribute. And it's really important. Obviously, an area to keep an eye on at the moment, given recent communications from certain political figures and CEOs within on a global basis. It's going to be really interesting actually to see what the repercussions of ED&I strategies are within the Irish market as a result. And then lastly, agility. And I mean that as in being agile in the modern workplace. It's so necessary because it allows you to quickly adapt to changing market conditions, technological advancements, and evolving customer needs. Being agile means you can kind of foster this culture of continuous learning and innovation and make sure that your business stays competitive and resilient. So again, in leadership interviews, you will more than likely be asked on your agility, whether that be you've been working on something, how did you know that it wasn't working, and how did you pivot, what data did you use, and how quickly did you pivot, and what did you learn from it? So all of these things are things that employers are looking for, because they're looking for people now in leadership positions who are really open to being able to adapt to their environments. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Some of the must-have skills. And I think based on what I've just spoken about, how does this translate into what hiring managers are looking for when they're sourcing talent? And I can tell you that probably every leadership position I've worked on recruiting over the past 5 years, you'd see at least 2, if not 3 of the following skills and competencies have been mentioned by the hiring manager as being either important or extremely important or non-negotiable by the hiring manager. Number 1 is strategic thinking paired with operational expertise. And what I mean by that is beyond managing day-to-day operations, managers are now expected to contribute to long-term strategic goals. So they've got to understand how their team and the work that their team does aligns with the broader company vision and how they communicate this to their employees. So hugely important. And I think to have that strategic thinking and to be able to combine it with on the ground operational work as well. Number 2 is lifelong learning and upskilling. And the pace of change at the moment means that managers need to be lifelong learners. So continuous professional development, including learning new technologies, management methodologies, even emotional intelligence techniques, etc. It's essential. And I think that companies increasingly expect managers to be proactive in updating their skill sets to stay competitive, to lead their teams. So do be aware when interviewing for leadership positions to be questioned on how you stay up to date with industry changes. Number 3 is collaboration and cross-functional leadership. So as organizations adopt a more matrix style or kind of cross-functional structures, managers are expected to collaborate with various different departments much more than ever before, and quite often lead projects that require knowledge across different areas. So this demands really strong interpersonal skills, the ability to work across silos, and a deep understanding, I think, of how different functions, whether that be marketing or finance or operations or HR or legal, whatever it might be, how do all of these intersect? So again, this comes back to really working as a true business partner as opposed to staying in your own area of expertise and putting your head down and not looking at the wider picture. And then number 4 is sustainability and ethical leadership. And I think obviously there's growing spotlight and pressure on managers to consider the environmental, social, and governance impacts of their decisions. They're expected to be able to integrate sustainability into business practices and to uphold ethical standards. People leaders will more than likely be asked on how they contribute to ESG initiatives within their own business if you're speaking to other people and interviewing for roles. So Aisling, let's move on to the next slide. I just wanted to touch on this because I think it's really important to mention. You know, you're doing it all. So what's the downside on you? Number 1, overwhelm and burnout. And I think we're looking here at an ever expanding range of responsibilities. So obviously managers face the risk of burnout, balancing operational tasks, strategic thinking, emotional support, continuous learning. It can be really, really overwhelming. And the pressure to constantly deliver results while maintaining team morale and managing your own personal development, it can take a really significant toll on a manager's mental and physical health. And I think it's really critical for anyone in a leadership position to know what support is available to them, to reach out, to ask for help, to form peer groups with others who are, you know, have similar roles and responsibilities, and also for organizations to provide the necessary support, training, resources, etc., to prevent this from happening. Then there's the risk of something I call kind of balancing depth with breadth. And this is about the demand for managers to possess both a broad knowledge and deep expertise in the various areas. And it does present its own set of challenges. I think while managers are expected to be versatile and to adapt to rapidly changing business landscapes, this often leads to a dilution of their expertise in any one domain. When stretched too thin across different areas, they might struggle to maintain the level of depth needed to provide any meaningful insights and guidance in critical areas. So it's a real constant tightrope walk. You know, and I think it can undermine a manager's credibility while they're attempting to stay expert level in every area. It can be absolutely exhausting. So, Aisling, moving on to the next slide, if that's okay, please. we're just going to talk about, after all this, I think you might be thinking, oh my goodness, who on earth here would want to become a manager? There are loads of upsides. And I think being a people leader comes with so many benefits and opportunities for personal growth, influence and impact. And I'm just going to touch on a few. And hopefully the people on the call here will agree with me. Personal growth, I think leading a team challenges you to develop skills in communication, conflict resolution, decision making. It helps you grow as a person. It teaches you, hopefully teaches you empathy, resilience, adaptability. I personally have found it probably the biggest privilege in my career is, being able to manage other people and to hold their career and development, very closely. And it's something incredibly special. It definitely has taught me life skills. I think I will definitely carry over into other areas of my life. Influence. I think as a people leader, you have the opportunity to really shape culture, values, and the direction of a team. You get to inspire, motivate, and guide others to reach their potential. Building relationships, obviously huge. You get to form very meaningful and impactful relationships with your team members. Development of others. I think, again, one of the most rewarding aspects is being able to help other people grow in their careers. Recognition. Obviously, a good people leader can often be recognized for the success of their team. When your team does well, you get a share of that, and that can be highly, highly fulfilling. Also, I think, things like problem solving, people leadership really involves helping your team overcome challenges and finding really creative solutions to problems. Quite often ones that you don't expect, can be the ones that take up the most time, but can be really also intellectually rewarding. Obviously, career advancement. Being a successful people leader can open doors for future, career and further career opportunities and advancement, because leadership and leadership experience is highly valued across all industry sectors. And then you've got to, creating a positive impact. And I think this can be really important, especially the further you go on in your career. You look at the impact that you have on your team, you look at the impact you have on the organization, on the business, and even, the customers that you deal with. And leading a team in a way that fosters maybe trust, collaboration, and growth, it can really leave a lasting legacy. So we're going to move on to my last slide. And I'm very glad I've stayed more or less within the 30 minutes that I've been allotted, just maybe 1 or 2 moments over. But I wanted to touch now on how you demonstrate these skills in an interview, because I've done a lot of talking today about the skills and the competencies and what people are looking for, but how does that translate into an interview situation, and how will you get asked these type of questions? So there are a range of competencies that hiring organizations will look for when recruiting individuals at management level. And I'm not going to go into all of them here today, but probably the most common ones that I've come across are, number one, no surprise, communicating and influencing. So how can you adopt a range of communication techniques to engage and influence and challenge other people effectively? That's really where you'll get asked at a managerial and at a leadership level. It's not about your own communication skills, it's how you use them to engage and influence others. So the type of question that you might get would be something along these lines. Give me an example that best illustrates your ability to deal with challenging views and differences of opinion and steer a group to an agreed outcome. What was your role? What was the objective? And who was involved? So I know that's a really wordy question, but I wanted to give you an idea of how a hiring manager is going to assess your level of communication. So obviously you're going to be using your STAR method, answering these questions, and it's an opportunity, I think, for people to think, how am I going to portray myself in a really positive light here, and to think of a really good example that they can give. Number two, results delivery. So this is, demonstrating a level of conscientiousness and organization in the delivery of really high quality commercial work. And a typical question might be, give me an example of a stretch target that you set for your team. How did you set it? How did you go about achieving it? What steps did you take? How successful were you? Number three, critical thinking and innovation. So this is looking at the ability to consider a problem from multiple perspectives. So again, a question you might get asked is, tell me about a time where you had to make an important or a time-bound decision in the absence of having full information. What was your approach? Why was it important for you to act promptly? How did you feel in hindsight? Should you have done anything differently? So very long, wordy questions, but hopefully you're getting the gist. Number 4, teamwork and collaboration. So obviously being able to work effectively as part of a team and to lead a team to deliver results. So type of question would be, tell me about a time where you had to lead a cross-functional team in the pursuit of a shared goal. What was your role? What worked well? What would you change if you were in that situation again? Number 5, adaptability. So being able to demonstrate the ability to navigate change and ambiguity while maintaining composure and a positive outlook. And the type of question you'd get asked here would be, give me an example of a time where you led a change initiative. How did you identify what change was needed? How did you convince others of its values? What resistance did you come across, and how did you overcome it? So a lot to work with there for anybody who's on this call who is either interviewing people or going for interviews at some stage in the future. I think there's lots that I threw at you there, but hopefully some points that you will take on board, because one thing that I would say is these questions can be really overwhelming if you're not prepared. Anyone going into an interview should be preparing a minimum of 5 or 6 competencies that they will be asked on. The ones that I've just highlighted are typically what most organizations look for in leadership positions. And it's essential, I think, that you take time to prepare each of those questions, because otherwise you can get really caught on the back foot. But there's a great opportunity to be able to put yourself in a positive light by preparing those answers well. And certainly for anyone who would be considering an MBA on the call, the MBA careers consultant who works in my team in partnership with the program office runs a program called LEAP, which has been designed in line with the UCD College of Business strategy. And the purpose of the program is to support MBA students to assess and to reflect on and to develop their overall career development by taking an approach, an evidence-based approach on what good looks like. So it's clear from all students from the outset, and then therefore really supports an optimum learning experience. One clear aim, I think, of the program is to optimize student readiness and competitiveness for employment post-program. So that, I think, is all from me. I know that Mairead is also on the call, and I think she has a slide that she probably wants to talk through with you, and then we'll have a bit of time for some Q&A. So thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you
Mairead,
so
I'll hand over.
Thank you, Louise. And
Thanks, Mairead.
Thanks, Louise. Following on from Louise's very informative and enlightening chat, shall we say, discussion on leadership, I suppose this is just to touch on one of the pathways to consider, that a lot of people consider when they're thinking of honing and fortifying their business skills. And clearly, as the predominant feature of an MBA is honing your leadership skills. And I suppose tipping that balance in terms of what Louise said, from the rewards of being an effective leader being a lot more like tipping the balance in terms of that's the main thing, as opposed to the challenges, I suppose, that we all encounter when we are managing people. So just to touch on our MBA here at UCD Smurfit, it's very important, and we're very proud to say that we are the #1 ranked MBA in Ireland as of last week in the Financial Times 100 top MBAs globally. So that is testament, I suppose, to the quality and the results that our graduates get when they've completed our MBA. Just to touch on the fact that we have 2 MBA programs. One is a full-time program, which is for 1 year, and the other one is our executive MBA, which is a 2-year program, and that's part-time. So you're required to be on campus 2 days per month, consecutively on a Friday and Saturday, and the rest is online and, meeting within project groups maybe over that time as well. Basically, I just want to touch on the criteria and the application process. It's really straightforward. The form is online. It requires a couple of letters of recommendation, the usual documents that you'd expect, your CV, transcripts, proof of identity, those normal things that you would expect, and a primary degree. If you don't have a primary degree, there's a way that we can work around that by doing or asking the students to do a GMAT or an executive assessment test. For our full-time program, some of our students do require a GMAT, but for the executive class, we changed our policy last year and we no longer required the GMAT in advance of enrolling on the program. Probably the most important aspect of our MBA and, you know, being offered a place is your professional experience. So for the full-time MBA, we require a minimum of 5 years professional experience. That's not including internships or, you know, short-term contract roles. And our executive MBA, it's a minimum of 7 years professional experience. We curate our classes to be as diverse as possible, with our students coming from, you know, in terms of nationality, as many nationalities as possible. Our executive MBAs predominantly domestic students, but we have about 20% who are from other countries and living in Ireland. Diversity in terms of gender, but most importantly, probably diversity in terms of the sectors and the disciplines and the roles that our students are coming from, because everybody brings a different perspective, and there's a big emphasis on experiential learning and peer-to-peer learning, and people coming from different backgrounds and different sectors will all bring something new to the table. So as I like to say, if you're in a project group with 4 engineers, you'll absolutely learn from each other, but there'll be a ceiling in terms of what you can learn. Whereas if you have an engineer and you have a financial controller and you have a medic and maybe, I don't know, a scientist, all the different views and challenges that those people have experienced in their professional lives are all brought to the table, and the learning outcome is much enriched. So basically, that's just a really brief overview of how to apply for an MBA. As I said, it's a really good pathway to consider if you're, as I said, thinking of fortifying and honing your business skills, and particularly your leadership skills. I'm available to chat to anybody at any stage if you want more information, or I can help you in any way. And my email address, as you can see, is there. So it's maireadmulvey@ucd.ie. Very quickly and finally, we're just going to, Aisling is going to send out another poll. If you would like anybody from Smurfit to contact you, or you want us to reach out to you in relation to our MBA, or indeed any of our other programs. But the leadership, I suppose, the flagship program that you'd identify with leaders essentially is the MBA. Thank you very much. And I think we are going to have a question and answer session now. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if any have come in, have they?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, guys. We do have some questions there. I'm just going to give this poll one more second and then I can close it off. 2 seconds. Sorry, apologies if you saw that cat. Always happens.
Always.
Right. Yeah, I think we have a great response here to poll. So I'm going to end that poll there now for a second. And I'm going to go to the next slide and pull up the Q&A. So guys, if you have any questions at all for either Louise or Mairead, please pop them into the Q&A box below. The chat function is disabled, as I mentioned, but the Q&A box is working, so you can pop in some questions there. So can you guys, Mairead and Louise, can you guys see this on your own screen?
Yes.
I can't. Oh, I should. Yeah, hold on. Give me a minute.
Perfect. I'm going to start calling out some there now anyway. So question there. So under EU Accessibility Act, they can lose access to sell or provide services and products if they don't have an EDI accessibility tools. Although some politics have changed it, so they will need to have access to the EU market. So I say that I think this is probably just a comment on maybe something you were saying throughout the presentation, Louise, perhaps.
Absolutely. And I think, well, I think Edie and I agree. I think it's just going to be interesting because many firms are rowing back and saying, you know, we've done what we need to do. We've successfully completed our ED&I, now onwards and upwards, and we don't need to do it anymore. So let's just, I think it's just something to watch in the upcoming months of where that will go, and whether some people will still be as dedicated to it as they have been in the past. There's one question there, Aisling, that I think, how do you deal with job seeking in leadership and management when you have the training but not the experience? I think that's a really good point, because certainly in my experience, very few people get promoted into a manager position unless they have people management responsibilities. I would say that the best way to get promoted typically is internally, when you're in a business and there's a management role and you go for it and you put your hand up. And then because they know your capabilities, they know your competencies. And I think that that's kind of the most natural way to progress within an organization. But it does happen that people, and I have recruited people in the past who don't have management capabilities, but might have come from a larger organization, to move into a smaller organization and to take on a more senior role. So it can happen, but typically it happens internally.
Great. So we have a few questions about the MBA, but before I do that, I might actually put one or two more to you, Louise.
Yeah.
Someone here said they find it very difficult due to their young age to be respected by older staff. Maybe some advice that you might have for them?
Yeah, look, I think the multi-generational issue in the workplace is big at the moment because, now more than ever before, we have a growing population, of people in their 20s who are working alongside 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I think there is a real generational divide where people in their 50s who grew up in a much different command and control environment, who were told what to do, are looking at people in their 20s going, they're just not like us. And it's a conversation that I have with clients all the time, that the best way to get around this is for both sides to communicate with each other. I think that older workers, I'll call myself an older worker, it would be so stupid of us and so remiss of us not to appreciate what a young worker can bring in terms of skills. I mean, these guys are digital natives. They know so much more. Anybody in their 20s knows so much more than I do about technology. And they have a fresh perspective and outlook. And it would be really disrespectful of me not to appreciate that. And on the other hand, I think there's skills that I will bring to the table that somebody 30 years my junior may not necessarily have. So for me, it's all about communication. And if there's disrespect in the workplace, I think, if you can address that in some way, shape or form, and communicate through it, because I think both sides have a huge amount to bring to the party.
That's great. And actually a question here as well, Louise. During your presentation, I think you had some brilliant questions that people could prepare going into an interview.
Yes.
So someone was just wondering, could they get them? So I actually might get you to send them on to me. And what I'll do, guys, is that I'll send them in the email where I'm going to send the recording of the webinar as well. Does that suit, Louise?
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked through them very quickly, so I'm sure it was a bit overwhelming. But yeah, we're absolutely very happy to share with them.
Perfect. And it'll be a great resource as well, just for people to have.
Yeah.
I might come to some of the MBA questions, Mairead.
Sure.
So just two questions. So first of all, what are the class sizes? And somebody else is wondering what the maximum age is for the MBA program.
Well, first of all, there's no maximum age. It's never too late, or you're never too old to learn something new, as we all appreciate. So there's no maximum age. However, the demographic of the two classes tends to be slightly different. So the full-time MBA is a slightly younger demographic, although this year's incoming class, it's actually gone up. So traditionally, it would have been about 30, the average age on the full-time class. We're expecting it'll be about 36, 37 this year, which is great. Because again, it's just the whole, the richer the experience that the students have had that are in the class. And the demographic of the executive class is slightly older. So it tends to be on average age 37, but there's no limit. So we would look at, as I said, you need at least 7 years experience. So you're looking at people from the very sort of late 20s, well up into the 50s, essentially, So there is no maximum age, and both classes tend to have approximately 40 students per class. So, it's a nice small class, but it's also big enough in terms of learning, I suppose, and learning from each other. The classes are specifically designed to be that size because there's a huge amount of resources that go into the MBA and the teaching of the MBA. It's very focused, I suppose, on the students. So we don't have very big classes, essentially. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mairead. And another question for you. Just some people wondering about the fees of the MBA and what they look like.
Yeah, the fees, it's not cheap, I will say that. At the moment, it's 37,000, But we do have a number of scholarships that are available to our students, and I would be very happy to talk to anybody about that offline, essentially, if they want to contact me. So anything to do with scholarships, or for the executive MBA, a lot of employers sponsor or partially sponsor the students. So there's ways of working around it, essentially. What I will say about the MBA and the cost, it's a big cost, okay, but it is an investment. So it's an investment in your career, in your skills. It gives you that kind of it gives you a lot of tools that aren't even just can be utilized, shall we say, in your work environment. It's in your life in general. And a lot of, anecdotally, a lot of students and graduates have told me that it's kind of the making of them in lots of ways. So it's an investment in yourself, and it's an investment in your company in terms of your performance and what you bring to the company. So as I said, very happy to talk to somebody, or anyone, sorry, should I say, offline about that and go through it in more detail. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mairead. And actually, I'm going to have one more question for you, and then we have some great questions for Louise, just giving them over to her. But someone's wondering what the next intake is for the MBA.
It will be in August of this year. So the executive MBA starts on the 20th of August. It's a Wednesday. You're required to be on campus for 4 days, 4 foundation days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It's the only time over the 2 years that you will be expected to be on campus for the 4 days. But obviously, it's really important in terms of orientation and understanding what's expected of you, meeting everybody. So that starts on the 20th of August. People often ask me, is there breaks over those 2 years? Of course there is. We have, a break over Christmas for a couple of weeks, probably about 3 weeks. Then there's the normal Easter break, and there's 6 weeks break in the summer. So even though it's intense and it's over the 2 years, it's an academic year as well at the end of the day, and there are breaks. The full-time MBA starts about a week later, so late August, essentially. That's when we would, I don't have the exact date, but that's the next intake for both classes. We still have places available. I should add that I'm exceptionally busy at the moment, if I'm being honest, with applications and with people wanting to discuss their options and what might suit them best, and how to navigate, I suppose, the application process. There is an interview, by the way. I didn't mention that as part of the process, where either I interview you or one of my colleagues on the MBA team interview you, and that's just really to identify your motivation, why you want to do it, what you hope to achieve from being an MBA graduate, and make sure that you're committed and engaged, because again, that we need people, and we only want people who are going to be committed, engaged, and they always are, because that affects everybody in the class, essentially. Thank you.
Perfect. Right, Louise, we've racked up a good few questions for you, so we'll try to get you through as many as we can. First question there. So how do you overcome that middle management squeeze, the overwhelm of managing the balance of your existing role?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think that, as I said in the presentation, middle management is the most squeezed, because people are coming at you from all different angles. I think that managing that is, number one, everybody in middle management needs to become good at learning how to say no. Being protective of their time. I think it's very typical for people within that position to be like, I need to be seen to be doing all things and be all things to all men. Really important to sit back and go, you know what, that is not, something that's going to benefit me right now. I am too squeezed. I would love to get involved, but I just don't have the time. I think learning how to delegate is a huge skill. It doesn't necessarily come naturally to an awful lot of people, but not being the Superman of the team, not being the person where you're managing a team of people and you're doing all of the work and you're getting really frustrated with your team because they don't seem to be feeling any pressure whatsoever. Then something is going wrong in your management skills. Learning how to delegate, learning how to train people up. You become a manager because you're really good at what you do. Now there's a real skill involved in teaching other people to become skilled. So again, don't be the superhero of the team and be the only person who can do it. And it'd be quicker if I just did it myself. Take the time and teach other people to do it. And then I think really importantly, hold other people in your team accountable. All of these things that I learned through not doing particularly well over a number of years. And then I realized, actually, hang on, if I'm not making people accountable, it's not going to work. If I'm trying to be everybody's best friend, it's not going to work. And certainly if I don't take the time at the beginning to train people properly, it's definitely not going to work. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, great. We've two fantastic questions coming up. First one from Aoife Rafferty.
Yeah.
First of all, she thanks you for an excellent presentation. I agree.
Thanks, Aoife.
In your own experience, Louise, have you found that many senior leaders are promoted due to nepotism as opposed to their actual skill?
Oh, good question.
I suppose it's a hard question.
You know what? And this is one thing that I would say. I've been in recruitment a long time, so whatever, 19, I'm not even going to go back that far. If you asked me that question 20 years ago, I would say, oh, you know, nepotism is probably rife. Now I would say it has changed an awful lot. You've got global multinationals, you've got, you know, compliance and ethics committees, you've got governance internally, you've got really stringent recruitment processes where these people, you know, anybody's going to be met by HR, a panel, you know, and a number of different people. So one, I would say Dublin, Ireland is small. People know people. So there's always going to be that level of referrals going, oh, you need to meet Bob's son, etc. That's always going to happen. But there's a level of, I think, rigor within the recruitment process now that we didn't have at all 20 years ago. And I would say that anything to do with nepotism is really declining and declining really rapidly because of the levels of rigor and governance, and the fact that recruitment is really expensive and it's costly. And if you get it wrong by hiring Bob's son, who isn't particularly good, it's gonna come back and bite you. So you need to get it right. So I think there's those days are, they're not gone, but they're certainly not as prevalent as they used to be.
Yeah, yeah. Another question here. So, a mother of young kids who hasn't the capacity to take on a management role, but she has the ability, but she's currently unable to advance in her career. Maybe some advice for her.
Okay. Hi, whoever that is. I know exactly what it feels like, and I was, when I was a mom of young kids, I felt exactly the same. And I think that it's almost impossible to even conceive how you're going to progress within work when you're running home and doing your second job. That's also a full-time job. What I would say to you is make it known in work that maybe not right now, but you are prepared and you will be interested, and that you are fully qualified and able to take on more responsibilities at some stage in the future. I think it's really important for your workplace to know that you know, you have got ambitions and you have got skills and competencies. I'm sure they already see it. And I think that one thing that I noticed is that being a mom of young kids goes in the blink of an eye, and then suddenly you'll have teenagers at home who don't need you as much anymore at all. And I think that times change very quickly over that period, when you'll be in periods of your life where you go, I can't take on anymore, I'm totally overwhelmed, but I know that I could, to a couple of months down the line, suddenly you're able to breathe a little bit more, and you're able to say to your employers, I'm here and I'm ready to take on more work. So I hope that that helps, but I would make it clear to people that, you know, may not be now, but you are very, very willing and very capable to take more when the opportunity arises, when it's right for you.
Great stuff. We've a few people there just wondering if we can offer them any sort of certificate of attendance, I suppose, for the webinar that they can share on their LinkedIn. Unfortunately, we don't have that, guys, but we would love for you to definitely share on your LinkedIn that you attended the webinar, tagging UCD Professional Academy and Smurfit, and we'd love to engage with you on LinkedIn. But unfortunately, we don't have any certificate of attendance for this webinar. Back to some questions. So I know we might take maybe 3 or 4 more, and then we'll let people get back to their day. So again, many thanks for the presentation here from Michelle. How do you change the management culture that's in the organization? Ego and titles are more important than actually managing employees.
Oh,
You're here with the
Michelle,
tough questions.
good question. How much time have you got?
Yeah.
I think, look, I think there's always going to be a point in time where, you know, you need to sit back and you need to say, right, I need to challenge this, I need to address it. There's things that are going wrong within the company that I don't agree with, that I think are toxic and non-productive. I think that if you address those in as professional manner as possible, and they're still going on, and I do think things like ego are hard to change. It might be a time where you say, you know what, maybe this isn't the environment where I'm going to thrive, and it might be time to look elsewhere. That would be my answer to that.
Perfect. I'm actually doing it because I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to do a quick scan and take one or two more. So apologies now if we didn't get a chance to get to your question. 2 secs there now. Okay, an opposite question. Someone here from Anna. What traits suggest that a person should not proceed towards management?
I think number one, hi Anna, number one, communication skills. So somebody who can't communicate, who can't inspire, motivate, galvanize a team and get them to produce results. I think somebody, as you said there, who does not perform well under pressure, somebody who visibly gets very stressed. I'm sure people on this call have worked with people like that, and it's hard for everybody to work with. And number three, for me, if I had to pick three, I would say feedback. Somebody who cannot take feedback. And we all know there's always that person in the office who people walk around on eggshells because you don't want to say anything to them because, you know, they'll take it the wrong way. And the person who gives feedback very brutally is obviously somebody who's going to find managing other people difficult. So there's three. You know, and I think things like time management doesn't really come naturally to most people. It's something you can work on, but then there's other qualities that are inherent within a person that would set off some warning signs to me.
Great, thank you, Louise. I suppose last question, we'll just touch on the MBA again, Mairead. We've someone that recently completed our own UCD Professional Academy Leadership and Management course, and they're just wondering, is there any sort of collaboration between us and you and how to access Smurfit MBA? So you might talk to them a little bit about that.
Yeah, we absolutely have collaboration. As you know, Aisling, yeah, we work closely together. There's basically we do different courses, I suppose, or programs. But I would like to talk to that person maybe directly. I know they mentioned, was there any discounts, or that would come into that whole, you know, the discussion around fees and costs and maybe potential scholarships, but there isn't an automatic discount coming from the Professional Academy to Smurfit at this point in time.
Great, thanks, Mairead. And actually, do you know what? One last question, just because it's a very good question, and then we'll leave for today. So back to you, Louise. How can someone differentiate themselves in an interview against a senior leader with lots of experience?
Really good question. And I think it very much depends on the role. I think sometimes there's going to be a role where somebody says, we really need somebody with 10 years experience in this area, and these are the reasons why. But for most people, and again, I've worked with hundreds of clients when they recruit so much on cultural fit and on fit within an organization. And that is about people's abilities or potential to work together. So they might look at somebody and go, that person's way more junior, but they're 100 times more energetic, more optimistic, more enthusiastic. They've got skills. They can bring all of these to the organization. We don't necessarily want someone who's been doing this job for 20 years. So it really depends on what the hiring manager is looking for. But I think to differentiate yourself when you don't have that much experience, you bring in all of the competencies that you have, the potential, but you know, it's about energy, enthusiasm. How much do you want to work there? I know personally, sometimes when I'm hiring, I'm thinking in the back of my head, could I work with this person? Have they got the attitude that I want to see at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock every morning when I come into work? You know, and quite often that's going to win the interview for you as opposed to 20 years experience.
Great stuff. I think we'll leave it there, guys. Let people get back to their day. It's a lovely day outside as well. But can I just say, Louise, thank you so much for this webinar. It was incredibly insightful, and you can tell by all the comments in the Q&A, people are delighted with it. What we'll do, guys, is we'll follow up with an email in the coming days with both the recording and those questions that Louise suggested for interviews as well that you can prepare. And Mairead, thank you as well so much. So for anyone who's said that they'd like to hear from Smurfit, we'll be in touch with you soon, and Mairead will be able to set up a call with you guys individually. And I think we'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for
Thanks,
coming
guys.
on. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.